That is no country for old men, the young in one another's arms, birds in the trees, those dying generations at their song. The salmon falls, the mackerel crowded seas, fish, flesh, or fowl commend all summer long whatever is begotten, born, and dies. Caught in that sensual music, all neglect monuments of unaging intellect. An aged man is but a paltry thing, a tattered coat upon a stick, unless soul clap its hands and sing, and louder sing for every tatter in its mortal dress. Nor is there singing school, but studying monuments of its own magnificence, and therefore I have sailed the seas and come to the holy city of Byzantium. O sages, standing in God's holy fire, as in the gold mosaic of a wall, come from the holy fire, Pern in a gyre, and be the singing masters of my soul. Consume my heart away, sick with desire, and fasten to a dying animal it knows not what it is, and gather me into the artifice of eternity. Once out of nature, I shall never take my bodily form from any natural thing, but such a form as Grecian goldsmiths make, of hammered gold, and gold enamelling to keep a drowsy emperor awake, or set upon a golden bough to sing to lords and ladies of Byzantium of what is past, or passing, or to come.
That was Sailing to Byzantium by William Butler Yeats. Let's break it down, starting with the structure. This poem has a rhyme scheme of A, B, A, B, A, B, C, C in all 4 stanzas of 8 lines. It does not follow a meter. The biggest thing I noticed about this poem structure is how large the sentences are. Almost every sentence is a run-on and contains many more ideas than just the subject and verb. This makes the poem hard to read and makes the reader read it fast. I don't know why the author chose to do this, because I feel as though it makes the poem more difficult to read. The next thing to break down is the choice of words in this poem. The author uses a lot of fancy words, but also some very negative feeling words. Some words that stood out to me are Grecian, which means from ancient Greece. I also noticed the phrase pern and gyre, which means a sewing needle moving circularly. I also thought that the words sages and singing were interesting in this poem because they have a churchly connotation, which contributes to my idea that the author is idealizing religion and dislikes the state of the young. Overall, I found this poem's tone to be confusing. There are a lot of negative words and even some imagery I'll get into next that makes me feel as though it is a negative tone until stanza 3, and at stanza 3 the tone gets brighter while the author is talking about God. The imagery I was referring to is in measure 1, where he talks about birds in the trees, salmon, mackerel, and he says this about fish, flesh, and fowl. And honestly, I find this confusing. The way I've interpreted it is that it's imagery of summer things along with the words dying generations and flesh. It makes me imagine rotting fish and decay because of the youth. There's also imagery in stanza 3 about God's fire and of a dying animal, and also in stanza 4 about Grecian gold. And this helps me picture the idea of a holy city that the author is longing for. The author also uses a lot of literary devices in this poem, and that helps him build images and comparisons about his feelings. So, an example of some of these would be metaphor: once out of nature, I shall never take my bodily form from any natural thing, but such a form as Grecian goldsmiths make of hammered gold and gold enameling. This is comparing his form after death to a work of art. Personification, and fastened to a dying animal, it knows not what it is. It's personifying the animal to having a lack of understanding of what it is. A euphemism, once out of nature, it's a euphemism for being dead. Alliteration, fish, flesh, or fowl. A simile, sages standing in God's holy fire, as in the gold mosaic of a wall. It's comparing sages in fire to a mosaic. And allusion, when he says singing throughout the poem, he's alluding to church singing. So what's the theme of this poem? I got the impression that this poem was about an older man who's disillusioned with the young and who wants to go to a city of God. The theme then would be that the young cannot be trusted and that God is the only answer. However, after looking into it more, I'm wrong about this poem. It's actually about a man who's sound in mind, but with age is losing the strength he once had, and is longing to be with God in his perfect form. And so the theme with that in mind would be more along the lines of that your body can fade in life, but with God you will be perfect. William Butler Yeats was an Irish nationalist who helped create the independence of Ireland. He also served as a senator in their parliament, and he won a Nobel Prize for his poetry. He was a very spiritual man, so that information helps me understand the way he was writing in this poem. The spiritual man is unhappy with his physical forms decaying, and is longing for the world that religion promises. And so with that in mind, this poem makes a lot more sense than what I originally read it as a complaint about the world. And considering what he did in his life, he probably wouldn't have been complaining about the youth, as he was a part of it when he was younger.